The feud was on now, and the three things that governed the life of the cabin in Lonesome Cove were hate, caution, and fear. Bub and her father worked in the fields with their Winchesters close at hand, and June was never easy if they were outside the house. If someone shouted hello, that universal hail of friend or enemy in the mountains, from the gate after dark, one or the other would go out the back door and answer from the shelter of the corner of the house. Neither sat by the light of the fire where he could be seen through the window, nor carried a candle from one room to the other, and when either rode down the river, June must ride behind them to prevent ambush from the bushes, for no Kentucky mountaineer, even to kill his worst enemy, will risk harming a woman. Sometimes Loretta would come and spend the day, and she seemed a little less distressed than June. Dave was constantly in and out, and several times June had seen the Red Fox hanging around. Always the talk was of the feud. The killing of this Tolliver and that long ago was rehearsed over and over. All the wrongs the family had suffered at the hands of the Falins were retold, and in spite of herself, June felt the old hatred of her childhood reawakening against them so fiercely that she was startled, and she knew that if she were a man she would be as ready now to take up a Winchester against the Falins as though she had known no other life. Loretta got no comfort from her in her tentative efforts to talk to Buck Falin, and once indeed June gave her a scathing rebuke. With every day her feeling for her father and Bub was knit a little more closely, and toward Dave grew a little more kindly. She had her moods even against Hale, but they always ended in a storm of helpless tears. Her father said little of Hale, but that little was enough. Young Dave was openly exultant when he heard of the favoritism shown of Falin by the guard at the Gap, the effort Hale had made to catch Rufe Tolliver, and his well-known purpose yet to capture him. For the guard maintained a fund for the arrest and prosecution of criminals, and the reward it offered for Rufe, dead or alive, was known by everybody on both sides of the state line. For nearly a week no word was heard of the fugitive, and then one night after supper, while June was sitting at the fire, the back door was opened. Rufe slid like a snake within, and when June sprang to her feet with a sharp cry of terror, he gave his brutal laugh. "Don't take much to scare you, does it?" Shuddering, she felt his evil eyes sweep her from head to foot, for the beast within was always unleashed and ever ready to spring, and she dropped back into her seat speechless. Young Dave, entering from the kitchen, saw Rufe's look, and the hostile lightning of his eyes flashed at his foster uncle, who knew straightway that he must not, for his own safety, strain the boy's jealousy too far. "You oughtn't 'a' done it, Rufe," said old Judd a little later, and he shook his head. Again Rufe laughed. "No," he said with a quick pacificatory look to young Dave. "Not to him." The swift gritting of Dave's teeth showed that he knew what was meant, and without warning the instinct of a protecting tigress leaped within June. She had seen and had been grateful for the look Dave gave the outlaw, but without a word she rose now and went to her own room. While she sat at her window, her stepmother came out the back door and left it open for a moment. Through it June could hear the talk. "No," said her father, "she ain't goin' to marry him." Dave grunted and Rufe's voice came again. "Ain't no danger, I reckon, of her tellin' on me." "No," said her father gruffly, and the door banged. No, thought June, she wouldn't, even without her father's trust, though she loathed the man and he was the only thing on earth of which she was afraid. That was the miracle of it, and June wondered. She was a Tolliver, and the clan loyalty of a century forbade, that was all. As she rose she saw a figure sulking past the edge of the woods. She called Bub in and told him about it, and Rufe stayed at the cabin all night, but June did not see him next morning, and she kept out of his way whenever he came again. A few nights later the Red Fox slouched up to the cabin with some herbs for the stepmother. Old Judd eyed him askance. "Lookin' for that reward, Red?" The old man had no time for the meek reply that was on his lips, for the old woman spoke up sharply. "You let Red alone, Judd. I told him to come." And the Red Fox stayed to supper. And when Rufe left the cabin that night, a bent figure with a big rifle and in moccasins sneaked after him. The next night there was a tap on Hale's window, just at his bedside, and when he looked out he saw the Red Fox's big rifle, telescope, moccasins, and all in the moonlight. The Red Fox had discovered the whereabouts of Rufe Tolliver, and that very night he guided Hale and 6 of the guard to the edge of a little clearing, where the Red Fox pointed to a one-roomed cabin, quiet in the moonlight. Hale had his requisition now. "Ain't no trouble catchin' Rufe if you bait him with a woman," he snarled. "There might be several Tollivers in there. Wait till daybreak and get the drop on him when he comes out." And then he disappeared. Surrounding the cabin, Hale waited, and on top of the mountain above Lonesome Cove, the Red Fox sat waiting and watching through his big telescope. Through it he saw Bad Rufe step outside the door at daybreak and stretch his arms with a yawn, and he saw 3 men spring with leveled Winchesters from behind a clump of bushes. The woman shot from the door behind Rufe with a pistol in each hand, but Rufe kept his hands in the air and turned his head to the woman, who lowered the half-raised weapon slowly. When he saw the cavalcade start for the county seat with Rufe manacled in the midst of them, he dropped slowly down into Lonesome Cove to tell Judd that Rufe was a prisoner, and to retake him on the way to jail. And, as the Red Fox well knew would happen, old Judd and young Dave and 2 other Tollivers, who were at the cabin, galloped into the county seat to find Rufe in jail, and that jail guarded by 7 grim young men armed with Winchesters and shotguns. Hale faced the old man quietly, eye to eye. "It's no use, Judd," he said. "You'd better let the law take its course." The old man was scornful. "There's never been a Tolliver convicted of killin' nobody, much less hangin'. There ain't goin' to be." "Glad you warned me," said Hale, still quietly, "though it wasn't necessary. But if he's convicted, he'll hang." The giant's face worked in convulsive helplessness, and he turned away. "You hold the cards now, but my deal is comin'." "All right, Judd. You're getting a square one from me." Back rode the Tollivers, and Devil Judd never opened his lips again until he was at home in Lonesome Cove. June was sitting on the porch when he walked heavy-handed through the gate. "They've ketched Rufe," he said, and after a moment he added gruffly, "There's goin' to be sure enough trouble now. The Falins think all them police fellers are on their side now. This ain't no place for you. You must get away." June shook her head, and her eyes turned to the flowers at the edge of the garden. "I'm not going away, Dad," she said. Chapter 25